Recording in progress. And so I have a funny story. Tom was over here. This is, we have Tom Hutchinson for today's episode. Yay. And Tom was actually visiting, working with the Dublin Silver Band and Dublin Metro and Dublin Youth Brass Band. Like a month and a half ago?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And he must have made a huge impression on our boys because we just got some guinea pigs the other day. And we got 2 of them. They're little tiny guinea pigs. And we asked the boys what they wanted to name their guinea pigs. And they want 2 guinea pigs named Tom.
No way. Well, that is possibly one of the greatest honors that I've ever been given. That's so sweet.
Are they both named Tom?
They want them both to be named Tom. Now we have directed them towards,
Tom and Hutch or what?
Maybe selecting some other names, especially since they're both girls. They're sisters. So I think we have Charlotte and Emily as my favorite too, but my oldest wants to name one Marble, and my youngest wants to name one Rainbow. So I have a feeling that I'm going to lose out because kids naming pets,
I just want to petition no more like plaques of appreciation. Now everybody just gets guinea pigs at this point. Right? Instead of having this thing that you're not going to put on your wall, here's a burden for you to take care of.
Oh, guinea pigs. You can name them anything. They don't come when you call them, so it doesn't matter.
I think given the names that you just read out there, Tom seems quite a normal name for a pet anyway, so I think yourself lucky, Amy.
See, this is
right.
This is where we fall into the situation where we're going to have like that one guinea pig aficionado who's going to comment and be like, well, actually, Tony, guinea pigs are quite smart and they will call if they've been trained to do so. Like, I'm always afraid to have absolutes on here because you'll find that person on the internet who knows otherwise.
We did have a guinea pig that came for certain that would come when we had certain noises. Like if we were letting her run around and we opened the cage door and it made that little ping sound, she would come. And she was potty trained, very well trained. But we did have a guinea pig that was very really trained. But yeah, she never came when she was called. So I don't know.
If we're on the topic of pets, I just should tell you quickly, I've only ever had one pet, and that was a goldfish that we won at the Summer Fete. My sister also won one as well. But unfortunately, I found it dead on the way to school. My mum had found this goldfish, had passed away overnight. I put it in like a see-through plastic sandwich bag, put it on top of the wheelie bin. The men had taken the wheelie bin away, but the fish had dropped out off the top. And I walked past it on the way to school, and there's little Goldie lying.
Oh my gosh! What a horrific
crying in the summer heat.
How long of a life did Goldie have?
Oh yeah, a few months.
That's not bad. I had, when I was doing the youth band many years ago, they got me a pet. They got me a fish. I'm like, I don't want a pet. That's something I have to take care of. And they got me a fish. And I was like, oh, it'll live a couple of weeks, knowing me. It lived for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
I had to keep the thing for 3 years.
So this being a brass band use one of the most awkward transitions ever, because we were sharing stories about when we were kids, and
we lost you during the subject of your sentence.
We lost you during that, whatever it was. It was the universe.
The point being, I'm trying to
the universe is saying this is not a BrassCast podcast. This is a guinea pig contest or BrassCast now. Yeah, guinea pig contest.
I would like to see a guinea pig contest, but anyway. So awkward transition warning. But so when I knew that we were going to be bringing Tom on, Tom and I don't think I really knew you when we were at the RNCM. I knew you were there. You had separate friends, and our paths didn't cross very much. But when I was in the UK, one thing culturally that kind of struck me was that kids seem to start learning their musical instruments younger than they do in the US. So I looked up some statistics. I'm not going to bring them up yet, but I think that they're kind of cool because I'm a nerd like that. But I did want to kind of hear about your experience in starting to play. And I think the American and maybe Canadian listeners would find that to be interesting because I think it's probably a little bit different than in the US.
Sure. Well, I think you're absolutely right, Amy, that a lot of players in the UK start at a young age. But I think, given my own personal, I guess, development, it was probably quite late because I didn't start until the age of 9. And when I look at friends like Phil Cobb, for example, he had an instrument in his hand at the age of 3. So I think there's nothing wrong with starting at the age of 9. I think that the reason my parents wanted to keep me back from playing was because my second teeth had formed around about then, and I wasn't losing as many, so it seemed like a sensible time. But I think what really started it off, I guess, to some degree, I was kind of destined to have some kind of music in me because both of my fathers that have been in my life, and I'll explain that, were both musicians and cornet and trumpet players. So my father passed away when I was nearly 5 years old, but he was a trumpet player, and I've actually found some of his old grade exams. I don't think he didn't do very well in the grades that I saw, at least anyway. But he was a keen trumpet player. And obviously he passed away. My mum then remarried 3 years later, a gentleman who is now my stepdad, Mike, and he was in the local brass band Stannington. He actually knew my father because they used to watch Sheffield Wednesday together, the football. And that's soccer, by the way, for your American and Canadian listeners. But yeah, so they sort of knew each other, and my stepdad took me down to the local band, or rather, it was remembrance service that I remember most vividly, and that was when the band marched through the village. The march that always sticks out, that really sort of got me, and it still does every time I listen to it, was "Voice of the Guns" by Kenneth J. Alford, I think it is. And after that, I just kind of said, well, I had my real father's trumpet, and so I played a few notes, and I really sort of enjoyed it, and wanted to get lessons. So my parents, my stepdad and my mum, they arranged for me to have lessons at my local school. So my first ever brass teacher, and those brass band aficionados out there will know this name. It meant nothing to me really at the time, other than he was the person on brassed off playing trombone. But it was Jonathan Beattie, and he was the we call in the UK peripatetic teacher at my local school. So Jonathan Beattie was for many years the solo trombone player of Grimethorpe Colliery when they were really at their peak in the 90s. And that was incredible, of course, to have Mr. Beattie, as he was called back then. There was a school band with a lady called Pam Hansen, who took us to local music competitions. So my parents always pushed me. But when Mr. Beattie sort of went elsewhere to a different school, I started having lessons with a gentleman called Roy Hartley, and Roy had a couple of good students in the area too. Had a good couple of years with Roy again, did loads of competitions, and then went on to Richard Marshall. Roy sadly passed away. He was an elderly gentleman, and then went on to Richard Marshall. He was recommended to us. And Richard was, I guess, quite young at the time, probably only 25, 26, maybe even younger. And I used to have lessons in the porter cabin next to the old Grimethorpe Colliery band room. And I used to love going to the Grimethorpe band room because you go, I mean, I love brass stuff, I still do. But you would see all of the sort of the monuments, and what was the fish and chip shop called? Can anyone remember? Can anyone help me out?
Oh gosh,
in Cod We Trust. That was it. So you'd pass that on the way, and it was like, wow, this it's like being in a film set. So, but yeah, so I had lessons with Richard. And during this time, I started with the Stannington brass band, and then went to the Barnsley Building Society band on principle. They were like a first section band. That was when I was about 13. And then that was around the time I had lessons with Richard, joined the National Youth Band, and then went to Rothwell Temperance when I was almost 16 on principal. Stayed there for a few years, and then went to University of Manchester, which is, of course, where we first met, Amy. I was there for 4 years, and during that time, I played with Black Dyke on solo cornet and Repiano cornet. So, that's kind of how I up until, I guess that's kind of halfway in my playing point in career. Can't believe I've been in Cory for 13 years, but I guess we'll come on to that. But that's really how I got started. So, both of my fathers have had a lot of musical influence and still continue to do so. It was my mum, by the way, is tone deaf, so I definitely didn't get any musical bones from her.
So like what I thought was interesting, because I definitely picked up on a lot of stories that are a lot closer to yours, as starting playing earlier. And I think that probably the majority of band instrument students, at least in the United States, probably start when they're 10 or 11. And in the US, we almost treat it like you can't start any earlier. And so I thought it was really interesting because I looked up on the ABRSM and YouGov. So ABRSM is some UK stats and YouGov is some American stats. And I looked up that on average, kids in the UK start a musical instrument at the age of 7.6. So that's all musical instruments. So I would imagine, violin and piano are probably at the younger end, and maybe some band type instruments are on like the older end. But then you contrast that with the American stats that aren't quite as specific, but it says 48% start between 6 and 10, and 33% start between 11 and 17. So obviously a lot older than kids in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my argument would be, what does that prove in the long run? Do you have any sort of stats which say that really the players in the UK are better than the ones in the US? I think what we do have is a history of tradition and the fact that most villages in the UK have got a brass band, and then I would say at least probably close to 50% of those have some kind of youth setup. And I think everyone realizes that you can't have a future in brass banding without bringing the youth through. And it's like a soccer team, right? You've got a reserve and you've got a youth team, so that hopefully you hope one day that your youth players will come through and come good for you in the first team. Not all do, just like in brass bands, but I think that culture of having a lot of youth bands is really important. And it's funny that in the UK, some people will tell you that brass bands are diminishing and that there's not enough young players about. But when I adjudicate at youth championships and I see some of the work that's done in the youth setups, including the Youth Band of Great Britain and so forth, it's incredible. And there's so many opportunities for these kids to play these days, and that's only going to get greater. So I think that it's I think partly tradition for sure, but yeah, maybe a sense of wanting to get these kids started younger. And don't forget that with tradition comes age. So, for example, I don't know if your parents taught you to play, Amy, but, you'll certainly introduce musical instruments to your children at a much younger age. So same with me. I mean, my mum wouldn't have never taught me to play trumpet. But once I'd got my teeth and my stepdad showed me at the age of 9, he probably would have done that a bit earlier had he been in my life. I don't know. I'm not sure. So everyone's different, of course. But I think that history of generations and generations of brass players definitely means that it's more available to people at a younger age.
I wonder if my personal takeaway from this, it seems like in the US at least, we connect learning an instrument so much with school, because kids wait until usually 5th grade. Some start in 4th grade, some start in 6th grade, but most start in 5th. And they start in school, and fewer students in the US get lessons outside of school. And so they are learning music in school. They don't have any participation outside of school. And then guess what happens when they graduate from high school if they're not going to be a music major? They put that instrument in the case, and it's sad. Every like late spring, early summer, you see on like the local listings online all of these band instruments up for sale. And you're like, every time I see those, it's just like, oh, that's a kid who probably is graduating and is getting rid of their instrument because they're not in school anymore. So why play that clarinet or whatever?
Yeah.
But I saw so much lifelong playing in the UK.
Yeah, it seems that band and learning music is more of a community type of building thing rather than you learn music type of thing. They do it because of the social aspects of being in the band, and only a small few or handful actually achieve high quality music education.
One of the greatest qualities I think I have is the ability to be able to speak to anyone of any kind and any age, and that has only come through being in a brass band. Because my memory at the age of 12 was looking around and thinking, well, she's 80, he's 45, he's, it's just like the person next to me is 17, so you're having to deal with lots of different characters and different people, and brass bands gave me that platform, and gives it, not just me, it gives us that opportunity, and it really is a massive education.
Yeah, because
I think. Go ahead.
If you think in the States, of the where people are picking up instruments younger, the two that come to mind is one in the Salvation Army. They're picking up cornets super early, and then the other one is an orchestra. But then you have the socioeconomic differential of people who are able to get into community orchestra or like community conservatories at the age of 5, 6. Or you have, the blockage of having to be involved in a particular religion in order to be involved with the Salvation Army and all that sort of a thing. It is such an academic hole here. And we actually don't even consider community music really until after grad, post grad. Like you have to, and like even then, like there are people I'm sure in all of our bands who like were afraid to join even just like, a podunk community band because they're like, oh, well, I haven't, I'm not that good. I don't have a music degree or whatever. And, because you've got people with doctorates who don't have full-time jobs sitting in community bands, and that's just kind of.
Hey, is there something wrong with that, Aaron? No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, pot, kettle,
Yeah. A lot of the community bands that are available in the United States, my first community band that I played in, I auditioned for the local university band, and they allowed community members to fill in their spots. So when I was in high school, I auditioned for that. So that was my first experience at probably 15, was playing in the university band. So growing up, we didn't really have those community bands. And so I wonder, this is the nerd in me, I wonder, with brass band expanding so quickly around the United States, if we were to revisit this question in 20 years, if we would see an uptick in people becoming more involved in community playing and more lifelong playing. Because I think when you see, as you said, Tom, like when you're in a community band, whether that's a wind band or a brass band, and you see those people who are older playing, it plants this idea in your mind that this is a possibility, that when I graduate from high school and I don't want to be a music major and pursue this professionally, I have an option. I can keep playing.
That's you've hit the nail on the head, really, because I mean, if you look at the statistics that Music College gives you, it's about 5% of professional musicians that go through college come out and actually make it as a professional musician. I mean, you could go on to talk about what professional musician is, but no, you're absolutely right. The ability to play at a high level, yet it'd still be amateur. I mean, Nick Childs, the conductor of Black Dyke Band, always used to say that it was like Olympians. I mean, we were like Olympians in that, completely amateur, but you competing and playing at some of the highest levels. So yeah, I think it's just huge, and also I got to say that some people in the UK, and this is changing, but some people in the UK do turn their noses up to brass bands. But if you look at some of the players that are coming out of bands and going into some of the top seats in the orchestral world, excuse me, that they're all from brass band backgrounds. So it's churning out some unbelievable players in the orchestral world, and yeah, it's something that should be shouted at, not diminished.
And
it does seem interesting to me. Sorry, Amy. It seems interesting to me that there would be orchestral musicians that would look down on the brass band when so many of the top orchestral trumpet players, Maurice Murphy, Harry Mortimer, were some of the premier players, and they all have major brass band backgrounds. So it seems interesting that there would be that kind of, brass bands, when it's literally the best training ground you could have to be a brass player.
No, absolutely, and it's. I think that's just a sign of the times and how we think about things. And it's interesting. I was reading a letter actually that was sent by Herbert Clark to I guess a sort of a student of his, and Herbert Clark was describing jazz as the devil's music. And I think if he looked back now and saw some of the players that had come out, he would obviously change his views. But it's just changing people's way of thinking, and I guess some of the old guard that think that you should play with no vibrato, straight, very German in style, then that's the only way. But there's definitely more ways of playing a trumpet than that. And I think that the British style is almost leading the way. Really, we've got some amazing orchestral players, and certainly in the brass band world. But other countries are catching us up. And not to sort of divert, but we look at some of the European countries, Switzerland in particular, Norway have always had a strong brass band culture, but yourselves, America and Canada, it is growing. Japan as well. You said interesting. You mentioned that 20 years, because I'd love to see what a lot of countries would look like in 20 years with the brass band setup. It's going to be intriguing.
And you're doing a lot with youth brass bands. You're working with the Swiss Youth Brass Band and National Children's Brass Band of Great Britain. You want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, certainly. Well, the Swiss Youth Band is it'll be the first time that I've ever done that. So I'm working as a tutor and as a soloist. That'd be really nice. And then the children's band is really the one that I've had an association with for many years. As I mentioned, I was a member of the National Youth Brass Band as a player from the age of 14 to 18. So something that's quite dear to me. And then to have been asked back as a tutor every year, either on the children's band or the youth band, so not the adult band but the older band, is just lovely, because you get to spend time with these youngsters and actually see their progression year on year. I mean, we had a concert at the weekend in Melton Mowbray, which is like the home of the pork pie. I don't know if you guys know that, but it was the first time the band had played there. Go on, Amy, what do you say?
No, I was just gonna chuckle, because it was as recording a podcast. Sometimes, if you don't know, we mute ourselves when someone's talking so that we avoid any sort of like background noise. And then you kind of cracked a joke, and then we were like, it was silence.
Oh, okay, so silence.
I was gonna like unmute and just be like tee hee hee hee, and then.
No, I thought you were going to tell me you've done the factory tour of the pork pies and everything.
I have not. I would just kind of contribute my chuckle and then get out of the way so you can.
Can some sitcom laughter in.
Yeah. So at this concert in Melton Mowbray, we had an interval, so I went down to see a few people that I knew, and in the wings were two lads that were now on the National Youth Band. Really, really nice lads, and I've seen their development year on year for about 5 years now. So I've seen them since they were 3.5 foot to 5.5 foot. So yeah, it's really nice. But yeah, so the children's band is something that's dear to me, not least to be able to spend time with people like Richard Marshall and Matthew Routley, Gary Curtin. So that's a really nice time as well.
Yeah, and you're speaking of things that you're doing, you're also doing the International Brass Band Summer School in Swansea. What's that? You want to explain that to our listeners?
Yeah, definitely. So that's run by Nick and Alison Childs. That's been going for, I want to say, probably about 20 years, and it takes place in Swansea in South Wales. And the idea is that delegates can have a mix between relaxation and, I guess, musical education / fun, if you like. So what usually happens each day is we have a band rehearsal, 9 till 11. The band, I should say, that the whole group is split into two. So while one band are rehearsing, the other half sectional, and then they swap it around after a break in the morning, and then the afternoon is your own. So you can go into Mumbles, get an ice cream, or walk along the beach. Play tennis. Just relax, have a lie down. And then the evening we have another rehearsal, followed by a tutor's recital every night of the week. So each tutor has to do a recital. So me and Richard do the cornet one the first night, and then it'll be Gary and the other euphonium tutor, usually Dan Thomas or Dave Thornton on the second night. And then Brett Baker will do one on the trombone, Joe Cook and Matthew Routley. In fact, Matthew Routley doesn't play, but he sort of organises it all. But yeah, it's a really nice event for the delegates to be able to come and not enjoy it as a holiday, but also get some some real education and some tips from some of the top brass band players around. So it's it's enjoyable for the tutors as well, because we also get to walk on the beach and go and have an ice cream down in the Mumble. So yeah, it's a nice week.
How many people participate as the classes?
Well, so on the National Children's Band, for the Swiss Youth Band, I'm not sure because it's my first time, but on the National Children's Band, there'll be about 60 or 70 children aging between the age of 12 to about 15. And then on the Swansea Summer School, there's up to about 120, Tony. There's quite a lot. And they age between the age of 18, so you've got to be 18 to go on it, to 80, and I'm not joking. There's a lot of people that just come down and meet friends and have gained relationships year on year. And they come from all over the world, I have to say. America, Canada. I know about 6 people from Canada coming this time. Switzerland, Norway, Japan. We've had Australia. So yeah, they come from all over for this course. It's a lot of fun.
It reminds me a little bit of a summer thing that I do out in California, where it's brass chamber music each day, and we fit in some time, like each group is, the coaches put them into like a chamber group each night, and we pick like 7 or 8 pieces for the group to sight read, and then they have some rehearsals and they have some breaks. And then in the evening, they have a performance that's like, workshop based, really, it's really relaxed. Sometimes groups have to like stop and restart because they just got the music that morning. But I think popular is going, there's a baseball team nearby, and they go out to watch a baseball game, and it's right on the coast. And so people will go fishing, or people will go hiking in the redwoods, and it's like brass and fun and relaxation, all kind of, and it's the same thing. There are people who have been going there for years out in Humboldt County, California. It's just beautiful. And so there are, every year they get together, and it's like, oh, how have you been? How are the kids? All that stuff. It's lots of fun. So I was just thinking of that when you were saying that. These kinds of camps are great.
Well, one of the best nights that the delegates enjoy is the brass in concert night. So they replicate the brass in concert format, and I think the band is split into 3. So I think they have the Queensbury Dykers, the Big House Blowers, and the Cory Corkers. And so one of the tutors will direct each band, and they won't conduct, they'll sit and play, and one of the delegates can conduct. But there's like 3 pieces, and they can put some entertainment into it as well. So that usually goes down a storm. But yeah, I mean, talking of trips away, I should say I went to France last weekend, and I don't know if this slogan, but if Carlsberg did such and such, it'd be the best in the world, has made it over to your side of the pond. But there's a really famous Carlsberg beer advert, and it's last weekend was kind of, if Carlsberg did solo gigs, they'd be the best in the world. Because I flew to Bordeaux in France to do a gig, and the guy that owned the house had a swimming pool, so I spent more time in the swimming pool and sunbathing than I did playing. But yeah, it was fun. But yeah, so I mean, it's going to be a busy summer. I mean, compared to usual, I have to say it's not too bad. I've got 3 courses this year. I've been known to sort of do 3 or 4 in a row sometimes, and that can be quite tiring and tough on the washing machine when you get back and have to do 3 or 4 loads in one day. But yeah, they're always a good laugh.
So I think something. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Aaron. Sorry.
Yeah. So whenever we talk about like people who work with youth groups a lot of the time, which we all have in some capacity, I think we talk about like what the students get out. I think the focus always kind of goes on what the students get out of working with the professional. We kind of talk about that, but I kind of want to flip it, Tom, and maybe chat a little bit about like what do you get? I mean, obviously, there's the billing and possible paychecks or whatever, but like I'm sure you get a lot out of working with students too.
Yeah, I think it keeps me grounded, and I honestly don't think that I need anything to do that anyway, because I've always been brought up to be humble and respectful. But it really does keep you grounded, because these kids look up to you so much, Aaron. I mean, you wouldn't believe. And it's such a nice position to be in. And I remember being that age and seeing Philip McCann play, or Richard Marshall, or Matt Baker, and all these, and it's like, whoa, they're gods. They're like, honestly, are gods. But actually, we're not. We're just normal people. So it really kind of just they love you and they want to be around you all the time. But it's just like you just want to give so much back to them, because I guess that's the position that we hold in the seats that we're in, because people think we're something we're not. And it's really nice to work with these kids. Not all of them are like this, I have to say, though, because a lot of them don't know who Adam from Eve is. So that is also quite nice as well. But it's for me, just seeing the kids progress and improve year on year is the most humbling thing. And there's some teachers that don't want to release their top tips, if you like, on how to get better, because they don't want them to get better than them, and that's definitely not the case for me. I'd love I teach at the World BrassCast College of Music and Drama, so I've probably got 3 or 4 students in the past that have been pushing me from my seat, and I'm like, yeah, come on, give me more, because it helps me, it keeps me moving forward as well. So I absolutely love teaching, but certainly the kids on the children's band, they're a special bunch. And actually, to think about it, when you're 11, 12 years old, to spend a week away from your family is quite a tough thing to do. So there's obviously a care duty that goes into it as well. But it's kind of it's a heartwarming week. It really is, if that's the way I can describe it.
Yeah, there is something to be said about that whole training your replacement situation. And I always feel like the star pitcher who has like that guy in AAA who he's been mentoring, and all of a sudden that guy comes up and you're like, oh wait a minute, not like this.
Yeah. No, it's nice. I mean, I guess we've kind of got 3 really talented players at Cory, young players. My second man down, Gareth Johnson, Hannah Plumridge on piano, and the 4th solo cornet, Owain Heston. They're all superb players, and we try and give them as much opportunity as possible to do solos or to sit in my seat. I mean, I think Hannah, she deputizes for me when I'm not there, and she was playing principal Cory at the age of 21 years old. So like, yeah, it's really nice to give those opportunities, because I had some amazing opportunities, but I certainly didn't sit principal corner at Black Dyke when Richard wasn't there. As much as I'd have liked to. I'm seeing him actually next week, so I'll tell him that I'm not happy about that still.
Yeah, thanks for nothing, pal.
Yeah. I had to move to Cory because I couldn't get your seat. Yeah.
They love that.
But what's really nice as well is that although me and Richard, I guess I'm sort of diverting a little bit towards Richard, but although me and Richard are about 11 years difference in age, we're really close friends, and that's difficult when you transition from being a student to a friend, and it wasn't always like that. Of course, it comes with age, and whatnot. But we're really close now. I've taught his daughter a number of times, We're playing golf at the Celtic Manor in Cardiff, or just outside Newport rather, in a couple of weeks' time, and having a night together, and obviously a few other people with us as well. But it's really nice when you get that, because actually when you get on stage, you just want to beat each other. There's that really friendly rivalry, but behind the stage, you just can't wait to catch up and have fun. And again, a divert, but the Europeans in where was it this year? Where was Europeans, Amy? Sweden, was it?
Sure.
Yeah,
it was Sweden. Yeah, it was Sweden. Yes, it was only a few months ago. I should know. Yeah, on the Sunday before we all flew home, there was about 10 Black Dyke and 10 Cory players all went for a big dinner together. And it wasn't forced, it wasn't arranged. It was just we met each other in the street. Oh, fancy a bit of? You go, yeah, it was great. Yeah, so it's a really nice rivalry between us, but also a great friendship.
Yeah, it's starting to be a lot more well known about the culture that the British brass bands live in now. But can you talk to us a little bit about, on a personal level, about how an individual assimilates themselves into the culture, what their work is, what their day job is, how somebody like you works in all of these teaching things on the side as well to playing with the band, and how that all works together?
Well, I think it's a general rule. You've got to, if you want to play in the band, you've got to be three things. You've got to be the best in your seat, and this is for Cory, best in your seat, 100% committed and fit in. So they're the three golden rules that Phil follows. But within that, you've got to find a job which allows you to play with the band, because we're away so often. So, for example, in the last couple of weeks, we've been to Sweden, Switzerland. That's 2 out of 4 weekends plus a concert either side. So, you're going to be pretty busy, and you've got to first and foremost have a job that isn't weekend work, because if you want to be a car salesman, for example, that isn't going to work. You're going to be working Saturday and Sunday, so that's not ideal. But that's just the rule that we have. But because we have students, we have a lot of teachers, so they get holidays, and there's sort of a little bit of leeway if they need to leave earlier on a Friday. But people just have to make it work. I mean, personally, when I first came down to Cardiff, I was working for Admiral Car Insurance, so I was on a desk with a telephone taking inbound calls for people that wanted to insure the car. Did that for 5 years, and as sort of the music grew over that time, I finished on 3 days a week, whereas I started on 5. So and now it's just a little bit of everything, to be honest, Tony. I got to do some teaching and obviously some playing, some workshops, masterclasses, and it's kind of living the dream to a degree, because I get to play my cornet most weekends, and it's quite nice. It's never going to make me a millionaire for sure, but it's certainly something that I always wanted to do, and I feel very fortunate and lucky to be in that situation.
Yeah, I was talking to someone at the recent ITech convention, International 2B Phonium Conference, and I think the conversation was interesting, because when I was going to school, you could go down the line, and almost everyone wanted to be a high school band director, because in our minds, being a high school band director was like best you could have. You could do all of these things with a high school band. And I knew that he was graduating, and I said, so what are you up to? Are you applying to jobs? Like, what are you doing? And he said, yeah, I found some great elementary general music positions, and I've applied to all of them. And he knew it. He knew that if he wanted to go out and he wanted to take all of these performances, and he wanted to travel, and he wanted to take these gigs, that elementary general music was going to be the job that let him teach during the day and then have that flexibility on the weekends. Because if you're a high school or middle school band director, you have those concerts, you have marching band, you have pep band, you have jazz band, you have musicals. You're going to be at the school. But if you're elementary general music, he figured he can be done on Friday and come in on Monday.
When I worked at Admiral in car insurance, there was a big sales floor, and we used to have to work weekends, and quite often I'd have a clash. So it felt like almost every week I'd be emailing the floor, not knowing whether I could make the Cory concert at the weekend, because I'd be praying that someone would swap for me and I'd work their shift. And that became quite a chore. And I'd practice on my lunch breaks in the meeting rooms and get chucked out while someone needed to use it or whatever. But yeah, it was just I think what I realized realized is that at college I always wanted to do cornet. Really, I never thought I could be a great trumpet player because I wasn't really trained in it, but I had a chance of being a good cornet player, so that's kind of what I ran with. And yeah, you just do the best that you can to make by. Once COVID had finished, because we were lucky in the UK that anyone that was self-employed were given grants from the government, so that helped me through that period. But once that ended, my girlfriend was sick of me playing golf, so I had to get a job. So I worked for a bank for 3 days a week, and I did that for a year, and that just sort of, while music got back going again, that really helped. So yeah, anything to make ends meet as a musician, really. And you always keep the phone by your side. I've noticed you might notice it went off earlier. Sorry about that. That was our tuba player. He's not ringing me to book me for any gigs, so yeah, to switch that one right off. But yeah, you've just got to have your phone available. Take lots of opportunities, and probably all the opportunities that you get given. Yeah, the best piece of advice, always, I think you know this, Amy, is just let your playing do the talking and be a nice person, and that'll get you much further than yeah, telling people what you can and can't do. So,
what's your handicap?
Well, it was I was 15.
The cornet, actually.
Yeah, it's 12 at the moment. It's 12 at the moment. I had a bad day yesterday. Oh.
But I think that was some really valuable information. It might be strange to talk about some of the side gigs that such a famous cornet player, an accomplished cornet player has. But I think when I talk to college students and recent graduates, I hear the same thing quite a lot. And that is that they feel like success is going to come from having all of their income in music. And I will announce on the podcast that when I was saving up to go back to school, I cleaned fish tanks. Yeah. Yeah. And there were times that I was, up to my elbow in fish gunk, and I would just be like, no, I'm going back to school.
And I think if they are lucky to get a job just in music, it won't just be from one source. So they'll have multiple sources that they'll be able to learn from. And that's really important. I think that for a musician, if something does go, then you've got the ability to cling on to the other stuff. And I mean, in a brass band sort of terminology, remember the YBS band? They were sponsored by YBS Building Society. When they stopped sponsoring the band pretty much folded, and they've not done too much since. And so yeah, I think it's good to have lots of different sources of income.
I think I learned when I was at the RNCM. There was like a seminar or something, and they said that the average musician has 3 sources of income, and that was a good thing because it's like a stool. You can stand on 3 sources of income, and then if something happens, then something you still have. Right. Well, COVID, but if one of those gets taken away, you still have 2 to lean on. And then that gives you your time to figure things out. But if you only have like 1 or 2 and that leaves, then what's going on, And
I think you can also include, like, if you're one of those lucky few that have an orchestral job and a good contract in an orchestra, they supplement that with private students or with university teaching or investment banking or real estate. There's a lot of other things that they do with that, just because even orchestras, as one of the more stable employment positions as a performer, sometimes they go on strike. Sometimes, they cut your salary. That's all sorts of reasons to diversify there as well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with everything you said. I think it's it's something that I've tried to do since being self-employed, because the things come and go, and I quite often don't know what's coming in from month to month. But yeah, I guess once the chops go, you become a percussionist, and then you pick up a stick and start conducting, right, Tony?
Exactly.
I'm joking.
100%, and there's not that much work there either. So
yeah.
I'm going to tell Phil you said that, by the way.
Yeah. If I didn't know you so well, I wouldn't have said that.
It's quite okay.
So for a topic change, we were talking about this before we pressed record, recording in progress, before we started, but you were talking a bit about the things in your background in your office. For those of you who are listening on a podcast app, he has lots of cool things in the background, and he even has these ancient things called CDs and records. I don't know what those are. But you want to explain like some of the things that are up in your wall, because we're curious.
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, the records are for the Sony 5-stack CD player over there, just on my shoulder, and it was my nan's. And I tell you, the sound is absolutely incredible. So I just can't get rid of that. It's fantastic. It's got cassette player in it as well. It's brilliant. But yeah, so I mean, as I said, my father was a trumpet player, and he used to go to a lot of the sort of big band concerts in Sheffield when they came to the City Hall with my nan. So we'd have these programs, and he'd wait for them at the stage door and basically get them signed. So I've got James Last up in the corner, that's signed in the middle. Woody Herman next to it, that's also signed. And then the two on the end, they're the same program, but one's signed and one isn't. Yeah, it's signed. I think the other one rather is signed by the whole band. So Sonny Payne on drums, and yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, I've got a nice metronome on the top left, which was my teacher's, my first proper teacher, Roy Hartley. His wife gave it to me when he passed away. Next to that is a little bottle of cognac I got from Bordeaux, so that won't last very long. And yeah, a few little gifts. And in fact, the sort of the plaque in the middle, I'm not sure you can see, that was a piece of wire from the demilitarized zone on the Korean border. So I got that last summer. Yeah, that's quite cool. I got that given as a gift. And
it looks like you have. Is that Tom Brady's soccer ball there? It looks a little deflated.
Yeah. The two signed Sheffield Wednesday balls are at the back, but the latest little, I'm not sure you can see that. Helen Williams gave me this little cuddly toy. She just crocheted, so it was the Sheffield Wednesday owl, so she gave me that as the mascot of the Wednesday fans. But and then I got a baseball glove, and my auntie and uncle live in Detroit now, so a few years ago we went to see, quite a long while ago, we went to see the Yankees play at Tigers, and when we were walking around the stadium, this ball came over the fence and everyone scrambled, but my uncle got there first, and from inside the stadium people were shouting that Derek Jeter had hit it, so my uncle obviously got there first, gave it to me. I got back home and I saw that baseball glove that my stepdad had bought me when I was really young, and it was a Derek Jeter replica. That's why I put Derek's ball in his replica glove. So that's quite cool. But yeah, and I think the other probably thing I should show you, which is quite nice, is this painting here, which is done by a friend of mine in Norway, Kjetil Harland. I met him at a concert. He's a brass band player, and we sort of have a shared interest in art and music, and we've kept in touch since. And he sends me all these beautiful paintings. I think I've got 4 now, and I send him Cory CDs. It seems like a great deal, to be honest. But this is a one that he did specifically for me, which is quite nice. But yeah, it's really nice to have collectibles, and yeah, to be able to lucky to be in a position to receive some nice gifts from people as well.
I just want to put this out here because we keep joking about the records and CDs being old. I did market research for my doctorate that I just published.
Let's hear it.
And in the what we would call teenage demographic, so the 12 to 21.
Mm-hmm.
So they have zero interest in a CD, but they have 2,000% interest in an album. They are more because they know they're going to stream it anyway, and they're also smart enough in the music industry now to know that streaming's not going to get the artist any money. So they will purchase, even if they don't have a record player, they will purchase a record to just have as an art piece, and then never actually open the thing or play it. But they know that they're supporting the artist, and they have this commemorative thing, and then they'll still stream it on WAV or Spotify or whatever whatever they're going to use. So as an art piece, it's coming back, and a lot of my high school kids actually have record players now, but they've never owned a CD player. So we're like in this weird loop.
I have to say, Aaron, the other side of this wall in the hallway are 6 records on the wall. Yeah, 4 singles and two of the bigger ones.
In this closet right here are 7 boxes of over 1,000 CDs.
Wow.
Wait a minute, but you've only got what? You've got 3 solo albums? Is that correct, Tom?
Are you talking to Tony or me?
No, you.
I have 0 solo albums. I still play the tuba.
I have 2, Aaron. I have 2.
I just got a notification from the people who put out my album that they're no longer making CDs. Like, which is fine because I have boxes upon boxes of them in my basement because as we discovered, nobody buys them. I was like, I feel like I put it out right when some people were still buying them. And then over the next few years, like it just declined so quickly. And so I have some CDs because I thought that it'd be useful to buy them. And then nobody's bought them.
I think we're in that strange transition where people will still buy CDs at concerts because the audience that we sort of play to is generally, not always, but generally of an older persuasion. But it's kind of that weird point where I'm thinking, do I do another CD? I think I probably will, but certainly in 5 or 10 years, I think there will be. Yeah,
I would love to see the market research on how many brass band CDs are purchased by North America, like British brass band CDs. So Cory, Black Dyke, Foden's, all those groups. How many of those are purchased by North Americans? Because most people here don't know that WADplay exists, and plus it's a subscription. So if I want to get a good reference recording of my NABA test piece, I have to purchase a physical album from the UK, get it shipped here from God knows where, and then rip the thing because like digital distribution, it seems like with classical music artists, especially from the UK, is still a little bit behind in comparison to North America. And so that being said, your album This Way is like, that's where I tell every single person who picks up a cornet or a trumpet, I'm like, you gotta go listen to this. There was a I don't know, pontificate for a second. I can't remember the piece now, but it was a nice, pretty lyrical piece that was apparently written for you or you commissioned or something, and I don't remember what it was, at the Canadian Brass Band Festival that I adjudicated, the solo festival. And I went up to the girl, she ended up winning, and I went up to the person who won it, and I was like, did you listen to Tom's recording of this? And she goes, yeah, and I was like, I could tell. Like you sound like what a cornet's supposed to sound like.
Thank you. I think the piece that you're probably thinking of is Song of the Night Sky.
Yep.
Yeah, by Chris Bond. Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece. Yeah, but yeah. So I think in a couple of years' time, as I said, I think CDs will be a thing of the past. But it's I think there's still time for one more, hopefully.
Well, I've seen cards that like you can sell at these events, and it's a card that is like a download onto whatever, And so I've seen some of those, and I thought that was really creative. It was like, a card with with one of the whatchamacallit codes. I can't remember right now.
QR code.
Yeah, there we go. Like a QR code. And so you would buy the card. And so you still have something that they can buy at the event. Because if you're only selling online, then you want to take advantage. You're not taking advantage of that excitement of the live show that people want to then go and buy the recording.
But we did this with World of Brass. So this is going to be uncanny, as if I prepared this earlier. But yeah, we did this with World of Brass a few years ago with the Derek Bourgeois concerto. Mm-hmm. So World of Brass printed off these sort of nice fancy download cards with the QR code on the back, and then you scan it. The trouble was it worked on Android only or a PC. So they, I think they've actually got their app finished now. So that's obviously I'm not sure that the download will be necessary because they'll have the concerto on their streaming service anyway. But yeah, it's definitely moving forward, which is exciting. I should just get a couple of plugs in. I should say that any solo CDs, cornet particularly, that you want to buy, then I've got a shop called thecornetshop.com. You're talking about shipping to America, Aaron. I just shipped one the other day, so it's sort of all your cornet supplies. And something to look out for in the next couple of weeks is a duet recording with World of Brass that I'm doing with Richard Marshall. So it's for their streaming service as a video and audio as well. But it'd be really nice to do that project with Richard, and it should be and also the pianist, I should say, was my school friend as well. So it's a really nice project to do.
That's great. So I think we are just about out of time. So I want to say it's been wonderful having you on, Tom. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.